Hello and welcome to Hexed Encountered. My name is Joe. Today I'm going to be doing a playthrough of the game Atlantic Chase, the Kriegsmarine against the Home Fleet, 1939 to 1942. This is designed by Jeremy White and published by GMT Games. This is the second printing. The game was originally released in 2020, and the second release was basically at the very end of 2022, beginning of 2023. I will be playing the Solitaire scenario Operation Berlin from 1941. This is just preliminary to the first appearance of the Bismarck. So the Bismarck will not be in this scenario, but depending on how things go and the reaction to the video, etc., I may do a second playthrough video on one of the scenarios that do include the Bismarck. So here we get a quick look at the scenario book. This is the Solitaire scenario book. As you can see, Solitaire scenarios, they have various operations, basically. Blockade scenarios, Norway scenarios, breakout scenarios, and Arctic scenarios. This is Operation Berlin is scenario number B1. It is the first of the breakout scenarios. And the story goes, March 1941, Gross Admiral Erich Raeder has finally ordered the Kriegsmarine, two modern battlecruisers, to perform a forceful sortie into the North Atlantic. This is Germany's chance to cripple Great Britain. The Solitaire player is the German player in this scenario. So our objective is to strike British convoys hard, but do not lose a battlecruiser in battle. Return the battlecruisers to French ports. Setup, the weather will be good. The initiative will go to the German player. The map is the whole entire game board, the operations map as it is known. The enemy will set up some British task forces, and there will be 3 rendezvous markers as well. The scenario will end when 2 or fewer rendezvous markers remain and the Germans have no task forces in play. It may also end as a result of the British action table. So the way these scenarios work is you have basically actions here that you can see here, the British action table, and then there's a legend that explains what all of those are. You have a way to identify British ships. You can have an unidentified task force. There's a table for escort check. There's a table for determining the outcome and a table for debriefing. So lots of tables, as you would expect when you are playing a solitaire game. The game also includes, obviously, two-player scenarios, rather, as well as campaigns that can be played two-player, but you could also play any of the two-player scenarios or campaign games, solitaire, if you just obviously play it the way you would play most two-player games solitaire, by playing both sides to the best of your ability. So at this time, I am going to set things up, and then we will get underway. Okay, so here we see the British task force display. And I just put it on the map here so that it would be visible, and then I'm going to move it off to the side so it'll be out of the shot. So the British forces at start here. We have a unmarked task force here, which is located right here. Only has the cruiser Southampton in it. Then this guy here with the stripe, one stripe, he is the Cornwall, sitting right there. We have 2 convoys. This convoy right here is this guy. It's a trajectory, and it stretches over to Halifax, which is out of the shot right now. That convoy is traveling Halifax to Clyde. And then the stripe here, this guy, is also a convoy. This convoy is Gibraltar to Clyde. So those are the British forces, and now we'll switch it up and show the German forces. Okay, so here we see the German forces. So we have this guy here who is currently a station. That is the Admiral Hipper. It is down here near the Azores, right here. You can place it near any rendezvous marker. There is a rendezvous marker right below it, right here, which is out of the shot. There's obviously one visible there, and there's another one slightly north of that and west of Iceland, which is also out of the shot. I could pick any of those 3. I chose down here because I'm going to try and use the Shear, which is supposed to be on its way back to Kiel, but I'm going to use it to see if I can savage this convoy on the way. And then, try to go up and around rather than going through the channel. go up and around to get to Kiel. The other German force is the Scharnhorst and the Gneisenau right here, or Gneisenau rather, with Lutyens as the commander. And so that's a leader marker. His leader skill is seize initiative, so you can use that to seize initiative. We also have Gross Admiral Raider here. And we have the Hipper available as a reinforcement. However, if we deploy the Hipper onto the map from the reinforcement box, we lose a victory point. So it is unlikely that I'm going to do that because I would like to kind of keep my victory points. And I have the station marker for Task Force 2 here, I guess we'll call it, because Kiel is actually underneath the card. So it's good. This is going to be in the Kiel port when I remove the card and start play. So let's get right to it now. So as you can see pretty much everything here. We have our trajectories laid out. It's a little tight here as we go around Ireland to get to Clyde. So the Germans do have initiative first. And so what that means is we get to take some actions, and there is a player aid that shows all of the available actions for both players. And here is the card for that. And so you can see here's our actions menu. And these are the actions we can take. So I'm going to choose one of these. And what I'm going to choose is trajectory, actually. Because I do have two stations currently. One here in Kiel that consists of the Scharnhorst and the Gneisenau. And then down here we have the Admiral Scheer, which is a pocket battleship. So basically a heavy cruiser. And then we have our two battle cruisers here as well. So the Scheer is actually, in terms of speed, it is a medium speed, and both the Scharnhorst and the Gneisenau are fast, and they also are upgunned as compared to the Scheer. The British cruisers are relatively lightly armed as in comparison to what the Germans have out on the board currently. So the Germans have, in theory, an advantage, but the Germans have to marshal their forces very carefully because the British vastly outnumber them in terms of ships, and they have a lot of battleships, and they have several carriers, a couple of battle cruisers of their own. So this is a dangerous situation for the German Navy, for the Kriegsmarine. So I'm going to play a trajectory action. So what that allows you to do, if you're unfamiliar, there are plenty of videos out there that show you like the tutorial scenarios, which is why I didn't choose to do any of my own. I don't like to necessarily overdo things that other people have already done. This game is a couple years old now, so there is a ton of content out there available. I did not see a playthrough of this specific scenario. That doesn't mean there isn't one. I did look, but I may not have found it. So I am going to try to play this one here for you as a solitaire scenario so you can just see the game being played. And as I mentioned, I would like to do one that involves the Bismarck itself. So we'll talk about that later on. So we have our task force here in Kiel and our other one over here in near the Azores. So this one would use segments that do not have any stripes on it, such as this guy. And this one up here would use ones that have one stripe on it, like this guy. So when you put out a trajectory, you can go up to 15 in length, and you have to determine what you want to accomplish. Like, where do you want your ships to go? Now, this one is pretty clear in my mind. I want to intercept this convoy. And I want to do it before it gets too close to its finishing point, because there's an action called completion, which when you get to 6 segments or less, you can actually do kind of a dash to port. And you can get there in one turn unless the other side succeeds in what's called an interrupt. So if we look here, this is an 11 segment, or a 10 segment rather, I believe. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And this one is an 11 segment, running from Halifax over here all the way to Clyde/Liverpool. And this one is 10. So once this guy gets 4, from here he can dash, do a completion action. And similarly here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Once he reaches this point, he can also do a completion action and get his convoys into port, which is something I am trying to avoid. So you gain victory points by obviously doing nasty stuff to your opposition, which is what you would expect to happen in a war game. Right. So first thing we're going to do is create a trajectory here, and it's going to be kind of short. It's going to be 3 segments in length. We're going to remove this guy, and we're going to convert him into a trajectory. And the concept behind a trajectory is kind of the plot that you would see in a war room of the planned path of a task force or a vessel. And what that typically would mean or indicate, and this is true here in the game, is when it's a station, such as these guys or this one over here, that is a known location in a specific time and space. Okay, a specific point in time and a specific position on the map. We know that this guy's here. We know that these ships are here and these ships are here. We know that. This represents, we know the ship is, or task force is somewhere between here and here, or in this case, between Gibraltar and Clyde. So the goal is to turn these into these, because then you know what they are, and then we'll turn the enemy's trajectories into stations, so then you can attack them. Or depending on your viewpoint, if you're trying to get to port, in the case of these convoys, for example, you want to get to port and you want to avoid being turned into a station. So that's kind of the cat and mouse nature of this, of this game here. And it's a really clever mechanic that Jerry White came up with to do this. Okay, so we have our first trajectory. Now our second trajectory, this one is going to be a little bit more interesting to lay out. So we're going to take our force here and we're going to start laying out segments. So I'm going to start here in Kiel, and we're going to kind of stick to the Norwegian coast, and go up here. So you see we have a German air base here in Trondheim. By this point, it's March 1941. Germany has invaded and conquered Norway, invaded and conquered France. So we have ports here and an air base down here in Bordeaux. We also have Saint-Nazaire and Brest as well. Obviously, the British own the English Channel. And our 2 main ports for the Kriegsmarine are Wilhelmshaven and Kiel. There are port boxes. You can see kind of a couple of them up here in the corner. Those are the British ones. The Germans are over here in this corner. They're out of the shot right now. But those, you have the ability to put your forces into the port box, which protects them from being attacked at all. So back to the matter at hand. What I'd like to do is kind of you want to avoid, if you can, which you can't in this case, but you want to avoid air bases like this and ports, because they give what's called intel to your opponent. And that gives them the ability to do searches and kind of narrow down and, again, shrink your trajectory into a station where you can then be attacked. So we do have 2 pretty decent ships here. So what I may do is, now this is Iceland. This is not yet a British air base. Okay. So what we may do is try to bring these guys to battle. That's one of the things I need to worry or think and consider about, because, for every British ship I kill, that's victory points for me. But at the same time, while these guys are not as dangerous as our ships, they're not they're not without their own claws, so to speak. So I'm going to live dangerously, and we're going to try to take these guys on. So I'm going to head right for them and see what happens. Fortune favors the bold. Sometimes that backfires on you, but you have to take risks to be successful. That is my opinion. Okay, so then what we're going to do is what is called a pass. And when you pass, you can do what's called basically a time lapse, which will reduce the length of one of your trajectories. So I have to choose an active task force, and I'm going to say it's this guy right here. Now, typically you could put a marker on it. I'm not going to put a marker on it because it really doesn't matter, because at the end of the pass, the British are going to have their turn. So it really won't matter which one my active task force is. Now, this task force, which consists of only one ship, the pocket battleship Admiral Hipper, that is a medium speed ship. And down here, which is kind of actually, it's not here. Where is that? Oh, it's here, time lapse, right? So it actually is in the shot. So once you do a time lapse, you look at the speed of the ship, which in this case is medium, and his speed is 3. Now we have weather, and it's currently good. When the weather is good, you use these numbers here. So very slow and slow get 2, medium gets 3, fast gets 4. If the weather's bad, you have to roll a die to see how many segments you can take off. Since he's medium, I can take all 3 of these off and turn him into a station in the same hex with their trajectory, and that is what I'm going to do. So we are going to pass and take these out and put them off to the side, and we're going to put our station right there with the enemy. Okay, so now that we've done that, we have a shift in initiative. So I'm going to roll for weather for the British because they are taking over, and they get a 2, which does not change the weather. So the next thing we would do then is use our scenario booklet and roll for their action. And here's our British action table. So we're going to roll on this. We roll 1d6, and you have number of British convoy completion actions successful. So that is a 0 currently. They roll a 6, and a 6 is a C action, which is a completion action. So they do not currently have anybody who is eligible to do completion. So we read, select a British task force with a convoy, select the shortest trajectory. Action, selected task force attempts to complete in Clyde, Liverpool, or Gibraltar, depending on its destination. The task force may need to perform a trajectory action first. Direct route, avoiding intel triggers if possible. Okay. Time lapse, remove segments farthest from the destination port. If prevented from performing completion due to intel markers or trajectory length, which is the case, the British pass instead. The selected task force performs time lapse, removes intel marker if possible. So we don't have any intel markers currently. So convoys are very slow, so they would only remove 2. So we pick 2. Now the longest one is this guy. You want the shortest trajectory, so that would be this one. So they're going to pass and remove 2 segments. So they've removed 2 segments and shortened this trajectory. And now we would roll for weather by the Germans, because they're going back on the initiative. They get a 5, which is close, but you need a 6 to flip from good weather to bad. I'm going to do a naval search. So I could have done it on the last turn when I was here. Here's my thinking on that, though. When you do a naval search, you have to add together all the trajectories, both mine and the enemy's. And at that point, he had 2 here and was 10 segments long, and I had 3. So that would have been 13. By doing a pass was kind of a calculated risk. This is just my opinion, and I could be completely off the mark here strategy-wise. And those who have played this game a lot and maybe are much more expert in strategy at it than I am, feel free to let me know I'm wrong. But I was thinking we had 3 here, and as I said, 10 here, that's 13. By doing the time lapse, taking a pass and doing a time lapse to make this a station, that's now 0. And this, because, like I said, calculated risk, I was hoping to get kind of what I got, which was a pass and time lapse from the British, because they shortened this by 2, leaving 8, and that's 0. So now it's 8 instead of 13, which moves me 1 column to the left on the naval search table, which is down here. So what I am going to do is I am going to attempt, as I said, a naval search. So we roll 2 dice for that. So here it is on the action menu, right? It's right here. Active task force. That's this guy right here. And again, I didn't put the marker out. The search task force is this one. So let's put the markers out so that this is what it's supposed to be here. So here's my active force. And my search force, search is this guy right here. Okay, so that's now the kind of legitimate way you're supposed to do this. So I'm going to roll 2d6, and I rolled a 4, which is a bad result. So what that ends up being is we're in the 5 to 9 column down here. I'm not going to refocus. I'll just explain what it is. So it's what's called a oh shoot, I forget what it's called. Early or late, that's what it's called. I had to think about that. Basically what happens is you end up punching a hole in their trajectory and then it gets shortened. Okay, early or late means the first thing we do is remove this segment. So the search and the active task force markers go away, and this segment also goes away. And what happens next is I choose, as the active player, I choose which other segments to remove. So I can remove these, or I can remove these, and I'm going to choose to remove these. Next, we would time-lapse all designated task forces except the target. So this is the target, and the only other task force involved was this guy, the shear. So he's already a station, can't time lapse. So now we have a seize initiative opportunity for the British. So they will roll for that. And a 5 is low, and they are not successful in seizing initiative. So the Germans maintain initiative. And what I will do now is I'm going to actually do another naval search. Actually, no, I'm going to do a trajectory, and then I'm going to do a naval search. So we'll do a trajectory here, and I'm going to do 2. So we'll put 1 here, and then 1 here, and we're going to then do a naval search here. So we do the same thing. We add up our total trajectory. It's 4. Okay, so now we're in the first column, the one on the very left. So this gives us our best chance of actually having a positive result. Wow, I rolled a 2. So a 2 result is basically right here. So contact. So we attach a contact marker to the target. Okay. So we put a contact marker on our target. All right, well, put that on there. And so again, we do time lapse for all designated task forces except the target. So this is the target. So we're going to do this because he is medium speed, and then he gets a station in the same hex. And the British will again attempt to seize initiative. So anything under an 8 or less is a failure. This time they get an 8, so it's still a failure, but it was close. Okay, so now we have a contact. Okay, we have a contact here, and so that gives us a couple more options of what we can do. So I'm going to do another naval search, and this time I get a +4 modifier because the target is very slow and he has a contact marker. So we have our modifier track here, and we move it to 4. So whatever I roll, I add 4 to it. And we're in the first column because the length is now 2. So we roll, we get a 7 plus 4, which is 11. So we get a contact marker again, which we don't put a new contact marker down, but we also change it to a station. So we have located this task force, this convoy. So, oh, the contact marker stays. So now they can try to seize initiative. So we'll roll for that. I use the red dice for the British. They rolled a 6, which is not enough to gain initiative. So now we're going to do an engage action, which should initiate a battle. So we have 2 stations. We're in the same hex. Nobody has an intel attached to it. And so they can't interrupt if I'm doing this correctly. And I believe this is right, because just because we're in the same hex doesn't mean that we, like, the naval search is how we found them. So now we have to actually bring them to battle. So there is an engaged chart right here. So again, you have trajectory total. It's a 0. So target must be a task force station. So you would have a trajectory total if I was trying to bring them to battle. Like if he had been a station and I was a trajectory, I could still try to bring him to battle. But because we're both stations, it gives me a much better chance because we're getting a 0 for the trajectory length. So a trajectory level is 0. So pretty much almost anything is going to give me a chance here because we still have our modifier. So I'm going to roll my 2 dice. And we get an 8 plus 4 is 12, and a 12 on engage is surprise. So this is why I had to check it. So you can see here we have this escort check, which says each time a British convoy is shifted to the battle board as the result of an engage action, roll a die and apply the result in this table. After battle, the escort remains in the task force unless removed later as indicated by this table. All right, so we have an escorted convoy. So we are going to move to the battle board. So I'm going to take the shear, and I'm going to take the convoy from their locations, and then we roll a die against this table, 1 die, and we rolled a 6. So a 6 says remove a battleship from the convoy's task force, if any. So there is no escort, I guess, is what that boils down to. Okay, so we move to the battle board. So this is the battle board. It's on the right side of the game board. You have your 2 forces. They're both start in far range. Our convoy versus the Admiral Shear. So basically, for firepower purposes, you look at the counter. At the very top, you see the -2/NA on the right. That indicates a -2 to the die roll at short and point blank range, and they cannot fire at long or extreme range. The VS at the bottom is their speed, which is very slow. That also it will give the Germans a +2 on their die roll during battle. And then the Shear has a 2/1 and medium speed. So at point blank and short range, they get a +2 on their die roll, and at extreme and long range, they get a 1. Okay, so that's pretty much all you need to know. I won't show the actual table. I'll just tell you what the modifiers are. Normally, they'd be able to do smoke if they wanted to. The Shear could, but chooses not to because that's a negative modifier on the die roll. The convoy cannot. Okay, 3 hits to the convoy will disperse it, and we talk about that if it happens. They also cannot be destroyed. So we're going to roll. And I forgot. You have to roll 3 dice because we're at extreme range. And you drop the highest. So the 6 goes away, and we have a 6. So we have a 6, and now we add modifiers to it. We get a +2 for the convoy being very slow, and a +1 for the firepower of the Shear. Makes a 9. A 9 to 12 on the gunnery table is 1 hit. So we take a hit marker, and we put it on there. 3 hits, and they'll be dispersed, and we'll talk about that if it happens. That ends the gunnery phase of the battle round. We move to the torpedo phase. You need to be in this band to do it. We don't. Nobody is. Then you go to the maneuver phase. We will move up. They will not do anything because they cannot. Now you go to the breakaway phase. Now, it doesn't say so in the scenario rules, but I feel like they would try to break away. The problem for that is if you have the opponents in the near zone, it's a -1. And if they're faster, it's a -1. So they need a 9. So in effect, they're going to need an 11 to get out of the Germans' clutches here, and they do not get that. So now that we are in the near zone, that has shortened the range from extreme to long. So we just roll 2 dice, and that's our roll. We're in battle round number 2. We get a 6. 6 plus 2 is 8, plus 1 is 9. That is another hit, so they now have 2 hits on them. Now, again, no torpedo round maneuver. You know what? Let's live dangerously. We're going to pull in here, and we are going to move to close range, which now puts us at short range, not point blank, but short range. And we are going to, they will attempt to break away again because they are not going to maneuver. And they get a 9, which at the raw level would work, but because of the modifiers, they cannot. So now that we are at short range, we're going to roll 2 dice, and we can apply the +2. So we're going to get a +4 on our roll here, and this would be our 3rd hit if we get it. And we are in the final round. We get an 8. 8 plus 4 is 12. That is still only 1 hit. So that would be the 3rd hit, and they would now be dispersed. Okay, so what does dispersed mean? Well, dispersed basically means that we'll talk about that in a moment because we can do our torpedo attack now. So how does a torpedo attack? Attack from close, targeting close or near. So we can't do a torpedo attack because they're in the far zone. So forget that. I forgot about that part. Maneuver, I can pull in, but there's no real need to. I need to roll for them as well. So they get a -2 because firing is simultaneous. So let me roll my 2 dice. Here, they are at very slow, and they get no benefit except for this -2. That's the only modifier for them. And they actually rolled a 10, but a 10 -2 is an 8, and an 8 or less is a splash result, which means a miss. So the shear escapes unscathed. The battle is actually over. That was round 3. They have 3 hits, so they are going back to the task force board, but they are also dispersed now. Okay, so here you see precious cargo. A convoy may not be damaged in battle. In most scenarios, it may not be destroyed. That is true in this scenario. Each time it suffers a hit, that hit's converted to victory points for the attacker. Okay, they can't use smoke. I mentioned that. Disperse. So we got the 3 hits, which disperses them. Now it says a dispersed convoy is easier to attack via stealth attack. That won't apply to us because we do not have submarines or mines. Providing a positive modifier. During each round of battle, a dispersed convoy may only suffer 1 hit. And so basically, there's not a whole lot of impact. It just makes them a little bit less effective, essentially, I guess, because they cannot fire back at all now. So that's probably the biggest deal in this case. And we did pick up some victory points for inflicting 3 hits on them. The shear is also going to go back to the task force display. Okay, so after combat is complete, the battle's complete, both sides get a contact marker, and we vie for initiative. Now, we haven't seen that before, but it's really straightforward. You take 1 die for each side, roll, and the higher side gets initiative. In this case, that would be the British. Whenever initiative changes, you roll for weather. It stays good. Okay. So now we have to roll for their action, and they rolled a 2. So a 2 is an A action, which is an airstrike. Okay, so we do have the possibility here of an airstrike because we have Scapa Flow. We have a target. And we can even do a coordinating task force as well. for our airstrike. So if we look at the airstrike action, see, airstrike engaged, designate active force, target task force, and may designate air support and coordinating forces. Okay, so what does the coordinating task force give us? It gives us a +2 because the weather's good on our die roll. The intel marker will allow the, actually no, I'm sorry, the intel marker the other way, and I had forgotten to place this, so I did place it. When I entered this, when I first laid my trajectory out, that creates an intel marker because they had a station there. So I had forgotten that, which is a big boo-boo, but until now the British rolls hadn't actually activated that yet anyway, so it was not a massively big deal. So for the airstrike here, we're going to roll, we get some modifiers. So let's add up the modifiers first. So we get a +2 for the coordination. And I think that's it actually, if I'm thinking about this correctly. Because of the coordinating task force and the good weather, we get a +2 on the roll. But I believe that's it. So let's roll. And it looks like it's a 4. Okay, so a 4 +2 is a 6. And a 6 or less. Oh, we have to count up our trajectory. I forgot about that part. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So in the 6 column, it really doesn't matter because a 6 or less on every column of the airstrike table is a miss. So they miss. Okay, so once the airstrike is completed, you do another vie for initiative. So we're going to roll our 2 dice again, and it is a tie. So I think when you vie for initiative, if tied, the player with initiative maintains initiative. So the British remain in charge. They will roll again to see what action they take. They get a 1, which I believe is another airstrike. Okay, so airstrike, good weather. If the weather is good, perform an airstrike. Okay, so we're going to do the same exact thing. So again, we are going to have a strike on these guys. And we're going to have a coordinating task force. And we're going to have a launch. And we are going to roll our 2 dice. And this time we get an 8 +2 is a 10. We have 6, so that is the middle column. A 6 with 10 is going to be a contact and a single hit. Okay, so this task force is... Sorry, I have to rearrange these a little bit because they got messed up. So we have the Scharnhorst and the Gneisenau here. Lutyens is in there as well. He is attached to the Gneisenau. So we can apply a hit to any of these, and the British player gets to choose. So basically, because there's nothing to differentiate them, I get to choose for the British. So I am going to give the 1 hit here, or hit marker. I'm going to put it on the Gneisenau. Okay, so that finishes that, and we're going to do another vie for initiative. Time lapse, all designated task forces. We don't have any task forces that aren't the target, and the target doesn't get time lapsed. And another tie. So again, the British maintain. So now we roll for them again. We get a 1, and guess what? That's another airstrike. This is getting a little repetitive here. I'm not even going to put the markers out. We're just going to roll. And we get a 5. A 5 +2 is a 7, and a 7 is going to be a V, which is a hit on a very slow, which is not the case here. So that is basically a no result. So again, we vie for initiative. And this time the Germans win. So the Germans win. And so now what we are going to do is let's do an engage. So I'm going to do an engage here, because you can do an engage if you have a task force or a segment and the enemy has a station in the same hex, which is the case here. So we can do this. Okay, maybe I should have done it earlier before I started getting hit by all these airstrikes, but too late to worry about that now. So the way this works is, here's our engage on the action menu, right? We have an active task force. I haven't marked it yet, but we do have an active task force in here with a segment. We're going to put an engage marker on our target. He's a station, so that's good. They get to do an interrupt because we have an intel. Okay, so we'll see interrupt for the first time, and then afterwards we do a time lapse for everybody except the target, which is this guy, and so that means that we will do one basically. Yeah, okay. Let me mark these appropriately here. So this is our active task force, and our target. Where's my target marker? No, we'll just do an engage. We have an engage. Okay. So now we're going to roll our 2 dice. So our modifiers here. Our trajectory total is 6. So we are in the middle column. We need to roll something really high to actually make this work. So we need like a really good one here. So we probably are going to fail. Oh, we got a 10, and a 10 is a shadow result. So that means that, well, let's show what that means here. Now, we've had this before, but just to reiterate, the, skirmish, I'm sorry, not shadow, skirmish, I said the wrong thing. Same as contact, but if the active task force is faster than the target, the active player may initiate a limited battle. Player ships start in their respective far zones 1 round of battle only. Guess what? The Scharnhorst and Gneisenau are both fast, and the British, this would be the Cornwall, is also fast. So that means that we cannot, they're not faster. We're not faster, so we cannot do a skirmish, but we get a contact. So we drop a contact marker on here. Him and this go away. And at the end of the engage, we do a time lapse for all designated task forces except the target. And then we vie for initiative. So we're going to do a time lapse for our task force, which is going to be 3, because we are, actually no, it's 4 because we're fast. So we're going to remove these 4. And now we vie for initiative. And the British win initiative. So let's move this back down. And let's roll for the weather. That's going to be no change. And now we'll roll for their action. And we get a 6. And a 6 is a C. Okay, so 6 is a C. So we had this before. So this is a completion action. So we select a task force with a convoy. If more than one, select the shortest trajectory. So we have this guy who doesn't have a trajectory. But he is closest to where he was trying to get to. So we should probably create a trajectory for this one again. I guess we probably go this way. So now he's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So he still can't do a completion action because it's not 6 or less. Therefore, we have to pass, and the selected task force performs time lapse, remove the intel marker. I think the contact marker goes away, and we remove 2 because he's very slow. And this would result in the Germans getting the initiative marker back. Or the initiative back, rather. So let's flip these guys over. And we will roll again. So, well, no, we're not going to roll again. We have to decide what we're going to do here. Is we are going to make this our active task force, and we're going to try and engage action again. Okay, so we do our engage action. So we're doing the same exact thing we just did, engage action. So they do have it. They do have the opportunity to interrupt. So the way that works is they roll 2 dice, and there's an interrupt table right here. We only have 1 intel marker. They rolled a 5, and a 5 to 7 is a -1. So they're going to get a -1 on the die roll. But they get a +2 because of the contact marker. So we're getting a +1. And we roll a 7 plus 1 is 8. And an 8 on the engage is a skirmish again. So again, it's going to be no result because we didn't roll high enough. We need a high roll to actually succeed in what we're trying to do here. So at the end of that engage attempt, we do another time lapse, which is going to actually remove these and turn it into a station. So let's put our station there. Okay, and now we vie for initiative. And the Germans win and hold initiative. So now we'll try this again. So again, now this time we get no modifiers. So we're engaging in the 0 column. They get to try for an interrupt again. Whoops, I'll take it. It's a 6. I didn't touch it. So we'll take the 6. So the 6 on the interrupt is still going to be a -1. So we're going to end up with, again, a net +1 on this roll. And we get a 7 plus 1 is 8, and 8 in that column is battle. So we did get what we wanted. We wanted a battle. We get a battle. Okay, so the rules would say that they get to fire the cruiser, the British cruiser, is going to use smoke. Okay, so the smoke applies a -1 die roll modifier, both for their fire and ours. Okay, because they're firing through the smoke out, and we're firing through the smoke in. All right, so combat is simultaneous. So I'm going to do Gneisenau first. Why not? So we are at extreme range. So we're going to roll 3 dice, and I'm going to roll two blue and 1 red. We'll take the lowest 2, and we get so we lose the 6, and we get a 5 and a 2. So that's a 7. So 7 plus 2 is 9, -1. So we get an 8 total. And an 8 in battle is a splash. So that is a miss. So now we'll do the same for Scharnhorst. And they're going to miss as well, I believe, because they got a 7. -1 is 6, plus 2 is 8. Not good enough. Now they're going to roll. They get a -1 to their roll. So we'll roll our 3 again. They get a 3 and a 1. That is, well, this is a 3-round battle. That was round 1. We got nothing. Whole fat lot of nothing. All right, so maneuvering-wise, they're going to close. And the British will attempt a breakaway, I believe. But we're going to go with that. They're going to try a breakaway. So enemy ships in near or close zone will be a -1. Your ships in far zone and no other zone will be a +2. So they're going to get a +1 net on this roll. They rolled a 5, plus 1's a 6. That is not a 9. They do not escape. We go on to round 2. And the Germans, I'll fire the Germans again first. So they are now at long range and just roll 2 dice. And we get an 11. So an 11 plus 2 is 13. -1 is 12. So 12 is 1 hit. So they are going to get a hit on the Cornwall. And now we'll do the Scharnhorst. They roll an 8. -1 is 7. Plus 2 is 9. A 9 is also 1 hit. So the Cornwall is now going to have, it's going to be damaged because 1 hit damages it. It's actually going to get sunk. But before it sinks, it does get to fire back. So it can fire at the same thing, 2 dice with a -1 modifier. Roll the red dice for them. And they roll a 5, so -1 is going to be a 4. That's no damage. So the Cornwall has been sunk by the Germans here, because the first hit would flip it to damaged. The second hit would kill it. So 2 hits is enough to sink the Cornwall. So the Cornwall has been sunk, and that eliminates this. And it removes our intel marker, and the Germans get a contact. So I'm just going to put this contact on the Germans. And so that task force has been removed from the game. Okay, so at the end of battle, we move our units back to the task force display. I did put the contact marker out. I removed the counters, the cylinder rather, for the Cornwall. That ends it. I'm actually going to wrap up this video. We'll do a 2-parter. This will be the end of part 1. So thank you for watching. I definitely appreciate it. Please consider liking, sharing, and/or subscribing if you have not. Yeah, so that's it. Look forward to part 2. That'll be coming up very soon. And so yeah, this is Joe. And this has been Hexed Encountered. And until next time, happy gaming.